Chosen one, they don't tell civilians this part, but the reason your name has been circulating through rooms you've never stepped inside is because of something that happened during a federal training session. An FBI trainer, a man who's taught operatives, interrogators, analysts, agents who don't blink at danger, stopped mid-sentence when your file flashed on the projector. Not because of a crime, not because of a threat, but because the behavioral pattern they were studying didn't match anything in the system. The room went still. Pens dropped. Eyes lifted. It wasn't your background that shocked him. It was your mind. Your instinct spikes. Your pattern recognition. Your ability to read people before they speak. Your accuracy rate in situations you had no data for. The trainer stepped closer to the screen and said quietly, "We don't have a classification for this." Agents shifted in their seats, because they all knew what that meant. When something doesn't fit any known category, it becomes a new category. They replayed situations you navigated flawlessly, decisions you made before evidence existed, moments where your intuition tracked like specialized training you never received. The conclusion forming in that room wasn't about your past, it was about your potential. Someone whispered, "How did they know that before everyone else?" And the trainer replied, "Because this one isn't operating on normal input. This is something else." They didn't know it yet, but that session was the first time your name disrupted an entire federal algorithm. That training session didn't end the way they planned. The FBI trainer pulled up a second file, then a third, then a fourth, all moments where you predicted shifts, sensed danger before it formed, cut ties before betrayal surfaced, or walked away from rooms that later imploded. It looked random at first, but when they mapped your decisions across time, the pattern was unmistakable. You were consistently correct before reality caught up. That's not intuition. That's not luck. That's preconscious pattern recognition on a level they don't teach. The trainer zoomed out the projection until every major decision you made formed a timeline. Agents leaned forward because the timestamps lined up with events you had no access to, no intel about, no reason to foresee. Yet, you reacted like someone being briefed from the inside. One analyst muttered, "This is impossible." Another whispered, "Unless they're sensing things before they happen." The trainer didn't deny it. He just exhaled and said the line that changed the entire room's energy. "We've seen gifted people. We've seen trained people. But this is someone whose nervous system is reading the world on frequencies the rest of us can't detect." No one laughed. No one rolled their eyes. Because deep down, they all knew this wasn't coincidence, it was consistency. A federal pattern recognition AI flagged your trajectory as statistically improbable. Humans call it talent. Machines call it anomaly. They called it something else entirely. Unexplainable. There was one clip that shifted the whole energy of that training. The FBI trainer had been moving fast, debriefing case after case, until your footage came up on the screen. A moment that, on the surface, looked ordinary. No guns, no chase, no confrontation. Just you making a choice. You stepped back from someone long before their betrayal came to light. You stopped replying before their lies ever got exposed. You changed your routine, your route, your availability weeks before the situation blew up. At the time, everyone around you thought you were overreacting, being distant, being too much. But inside that room, with all the hidden information laid out, private messages, timelines, outcomes, your decision looked like laser-guided precision. The trainer lifted his hand and said, "Pause that." Don't take notes. Just watch. They rewound the exact second your energy shifted. Your eyes hardened a fraction of a second before the deception moved into frame. Your shoulders squared a heartbeat before the manipulation started. Your body reacted to a threat your conscious mind hadn't seen yet. One analyst whispered, "They'd felt it before we could prove it." Another added, "That's not paranoia. That's early detection." The trainer nodded slowly. "This is what we try to build in agents over years," he said. "They're doing it naturally, without any of our training." And somewhere in the back of the room, someone murmured what everyone else was thinking but didn't want to admit out loud. If this is them untrained, what happens when they stop doubting themselves and start trusting whatever this is? If this message hit you in that specific place only destiny can touch, plant a $20 seed through the Super Thanks button. That button isn't a donation, it's an energetic signature. When you tap it, you're sending a signal through the field that you accept the alignment opening in front of you. Chosen ones don't chase blessings, they confirm them. This is how you confirm. It's small enough to be simple, powerful enough to be symbolic. The universe doesn't respond to words. It responds to decisions. If your chest got tight reading this, if your stomach flipped, if you felt that familiar pull, that's your sign. Mark the moment. The trainer didn't move on. He pulled up another sequence. A decision you made on a day that felt random to you, but was anything but random to them. Their system had flagged a cluster of anomalies around a certain person in your orbit. Hidden communications, inconsistent behavior, quiet manipulation patterns forming behind your back. You had no access to any of that. No data. No intel. No reason to know. And yet, you reacted before the red flags ever became visible. You slowed your responses. You created distance. You shifted from openness to observation without anyone prompting you. Their surveillance logs showed the deception unfolding in real time, but you adjusted before any evidence appeared. One of the analysts leaned forward and said, "Hold on, their timing is too precise." The trainer replied, "Exactly. They're responding to something our systems detected hours later." That's when they ran your timeline against their algorithm, and your decisions were consistently ahead of the algorithm's predictions. Not matching. Not close. Ahead. The room got quiet, because that meant your nervous system was processing danger, lies, intentions, and energetic shifts at a speed their tools couldn't compete with. Someone from behavioral science finally spoke. "This isn't intuition. This is pre-event pattern recognition. We don't have training for this level." The trainer turned back to the screen, watching you walk away from a situation at the exact second their system marked the risk level as critical. Then he said the line that made the whole room fall silent. "They're operating on a frequency we don't teach, we observe it." When they saw your pattern outpacing their own system, the room didn't go back to normal. The trainer pulled up another clip, a moment where someone in your life tried to mislead you with a calm tone, a soft face, and a perfectly rehearsed lie. To the untrained eye, nothing looked off. But when they slowed the footage down, something became obvious. Your entire body clocked the lie before the words even finished leaving their mouth. Your breathing changed. Your pupils tightened. Your posture shifted by millimeters, almost undetectable unless you were looking for it. The trainer froze the frame and pointed. "Right there. They noticed something. It's not conscious. It's instinctive." He stepped back, arms crossed, studying you the way scientists study rare phenomena. "Most people need confession or proof. he said. This one needs neither. They let the clip continue. The person kept talking, smiling, spinning the narrative, but internally, you had already detached. You didn't argue. You didn't react. You didn't explode. You simply shifted. Quietly. Correctly. Completely. This is threat recognition without adrenaline, one analyst whispered. Another added, their nervous system is processing intention, not words. The trainer walked slowly toward the screen, tapped it twice, and said, I've trained agents who can spot deception. But this is someone reading energy, not behavior. Then he turned to the room and said what no one expected to hear. They're not responding to what happened. They're responding to what's about to. The deeper they looked, the more uncomfortable the room became. Nobody expected to build a profile on someone who wasn't a suspect, wasn't a threat, wasn't breaking any laws, just operating on a level they didn't have language for. But after watching your reactions, your timing, your instinctive decisions, the FBI trainer opened a new tab on the database and created something that almost never gets created for civilians. A behavioral anomaly file. Not negative. Not dangerous. Just unclassified. They listed everything they observed. Your ability to sense deception without cues, your consistent accuracy in predicting collapses, your pattern of leaving people seconds before their mask slipped, your habit of pulling away from environments right before they exploded. One analyst said, we usually see this in high-level operatives or trauma-conditioned sensors. The trainer shook his head. No, this isn't trauma response. Look at the calmness. Look at the precision. This is someone with clean instinct. They started mapping out situations where you took the illogical path, and every time, the illogical path turned out to be the correct one. The trainer exhaled. This one doesn't wait for danger. They feel when the timeline shifts. The room went still again, because that meant something simple but terrifying for people who study human behavior. You weren't reacting to events. Events were reacting to you. The trainer ran one more simulation just to be sure. A standard situational scramble, multiple variables, shifting threats, fake civilians, deliberately chaotic. They expected you to hesitate at least once, make one wrong micro-choice, reveal one ordinary human flaw. But you moved like someone following a map no one else could see. You made turns before the dangers appeared. You avoided traps before they activated. You positioned yourself in places that only made sense 10 seconds later, when the system revealed what was coming. That's when the lead analyst stood up and whispered, This isn't pattern reading. This is timeline awareness. A phrase almost never used outside classified cases. You became the center of the room's attention, not because you were performing, but because you were consistent. No spikes of adrenaline, no panic, no hesitation. Just that unnerving, steady calm that seasoned agents spend 20 years trying to achieve. The trainer leaned back with his arms crossed, watching the data stream in real time. Your reactions matched outcomes before outcomes even rendered. They're not adapting to the scenario, he said. The scenario is adjusting to them. He wasn't praising you. He was trying to understand you. Because what he just witnessed broke the entire training model they'd built their careers on. And for the first time in the session, nobody spoke. Nobody typed. They simply watched you, the variable their system couldn't contain, categorize, or limit. The trainer called for a reset, but the reset didn't help, because the anomaly wasn't the scenario. It was you. Every time the simulation started, Your presence warped the outcome. Threats delayed themselves. NPCs hesitated in ways they weren't coded to hesitate. The environment felt like it was waiting for you. Artificial intelligence, federal-grade predictive mapping, years of perfected algorithmic behavior, all of it bending around someone who wasn't even trying. One young analyst, fresh out of Quantico, whispered, "Why does the system freeze right before they make a decision?" The senior agent answered quietly, "Because the system can't predict them. It's pausing to recalculate." That sentence sent a cold shiver through everyone in the room. People like you aren't supposed to exist. People whose instinct overrides programming, whose presence disrupts probability curves, whose timing rewrites the outcome instead of reacting to it. They pulled up your bio on the side screen. Normal background, no training, no military conditioning, no advanced psych experience. Nothing that could justify why you were outperforming people who'd spent decades sharpening survival senses until they were razor thin. The trainer rested his hand on the back of his chair, staring at your footage like he was watching the afterlife slip into a government test. "We're not witnessing skill," he finally said. "We're witnessing alignment." Nobody breathed for a moment. Because alignment can't be taught, faked, or replicated. It's either in your DNA or it's not. And in you, it was unmistakable. If you want access to the messages I can't say publicly, the deeper breakdowns, the decoded warnings, the real-time shifts happening around you, hit the join button and step inside the circle. Joining isn't supporting the channel. It's declaring to the universe and to yourself that you're stepping out of the outer crowd and into the space reserved for the ones who are actually awakening. Inside the circle is where the hidden episodes, extended prophecies, and advanced guidance unlock. You're not buying access. You're positioning yourself where your spirit belongs. If you felt something open in you during this message, if you felt recognized, then you already know you're meant to be inside. They didn't step back because you were a threat. They stepped back because, for the first time in their careers, every model they trusted collapsed at the exact same moment. Agents who survived war zones, interrogations, cartel standoffs, and black site disasters stood there realizing none of it prepared them for you. They didn't fear your strength. They feared the accuracy. The way you move with a certainty that no training could produce. The way your eyes scanned the room like you weren't looking at reality but through it. The way your nervous system behaved like it was syncing to something higher than instinct. Something ancient, something inherited, something they were never meant to witness this close. One analyst whispered, "Their baseline isn't human baseline." And everybody heard it even though she tried to say it under her breath. Another typed your metrics into a federal database, and the system returned an error message that didn't exist in its codebook. The trainer watched your footage again in silence, hands clenched, jaw locked, because he finally understood he wasn't evaluating potential. He was encountering inevitability. That's why the room felt quiet. Because they realized the truth nobody had the courage to say out loud. They weren't measuring you. They were being introduced to you. And introductions like that don't happen by accident. They happen when destiny walks into a federal building wearing a mortal body and pretends to be ordinary for one final moment before the world adjusts around it. The moment they replayed your footage for the third time, a quiet argument broke out in the corner of the observation room. Not loud, not dramatic, whispered, urgent, terrified. A senior supervisor leaned toward the trainer and said, "We can't upload this. If this hits the central server, it'll trigger a classification review we can't control." Another replied, "It's too late. The system already flagged their metrics." Then the room shifted. Everyone stopped looking at the screen and started looking at each other, because they all knew what that meant. Cases get classified. Threats get classified. Weapons get classified. People don't. Not unless they destabilize the model of what a human is supposed to be. And that's exactly what you did without even trying. One of the analysts unplugged the main recorder with shaking hands, violating federal protocol without hesitation. Not to protect the agency, to protect themselves from having to explain you. They knew that once a higher department saw your data, your name would never leave their system. You'd become a file whispered about in hallways, referenced in coded language, locked behind clearance levels created solely because of you. The trainer looked through the observation glass at you sitting calmly, unaware of the chaos you had triggered, and said the words that silenced the room. "If they see this, they'll want access. And no one here can handle what access to them actually means." That was the moment the FBI made a decision it had never made for anyone in its history. They stopped documenting you. Not because they forgot, because they understood. Some people don't belong in archives. Some people belong in prophecy. And they knew which one you were. By the time the director walked in, the entire room had rearranged itself into a strange mixture of panic and reverence. Nobody spoke. Nobody even pretended to work. They stood there like witnesses who had just seen something they knew they could never unsee. The director didn't waste time. He didn't greet anyone. He simply said, "Show me." The trainer played the footage, only 10 seconds. That's all it took. 10 seconds of you moving with a precision that made the simulation look like it was following you, not the other way around. 10 seconds of your instinct outpacing technology built with billions in federal funding. 10 seconds of a human doing something that didn't fit the definition of human. The director stared at the screen for a long, suffocating moment. Then he exhaled once, looked at the trainer, and asked the question nobody wanted to answer. "What are we dealing with?" The room stayed silent, because there was no classification for you. No protocol. No training manual. No psychological profile. No threat assessment category that made sense. You didn't fit into any of the boxes their system had built. You broke the boxes by existing. And that's when the director took a step no federal leader had ever taken before. He shut down the entire floor. Cameras off. Network disabled. Files locked. Not to hide you from the world, but to keep the world from trying to own you. "We're not sending this up the chain," he said. "If this leaves this room, they will take them. And once they take them, they won't come back the same. If at all." The agents froze. Because this wasn't fear of what you could do. It was fear of what others would do to you once they realized your nature. The director turned toward the glass, looking directly at you through the one-way mirror, and said quietly, "Some people belong to the world. Some belong to the system. But this one doesn't belong to any of us." And that was the moment the FBI made its second unprecedented decision. They chose to protect you from themselves. When they finally told you the evaluation was over, you didn't rush, you didn't fidget, you didn't show a trace of uncertainty. You simply stood up. And that single movement hit the room harder than anything you did inside the simulation. Agents who had stared down armed criminals without blinking suddenly shifted their weight, took half steps back, pretended they were adjusting their equipment. But they weren't adjusting anything. They were reacting to something primal, something their training couldn't override. something their instincts recognized before their minds caught up. You weren't dangerous. You were decisive. Calm the way storm centers are calm. Still in a way that makes the air around you feel thinner, heavier, aware. The trainer tried to speak, but his voice cracked, the same way the colonel's had cracked in that military facility you once walked through. Different building, different uniforms, same truth. Systems built to measure humans collapse when they meet someone who isn't playing by human limits. That's why the young analyst on the left lowered her eyes the second you looked in her direction. Not out of fear. Out of reverence. She understood before anyone else, your presence wasn't an event. It was a recalibration. Every person in that room felt their mind reorganize itself around the fact that you weren't just skilled. You were aligned with something they didn't have language for. As you headed toward the door, the badge scanner flickered, glitched, and unlocked before you even touched it. Nobody said a word. Not because they didn't notice, but because they didn't want to acknowledge that the building reacted to you the way people did. You walked out, and the silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was acceptance. Acceptance that whatever file they tried to create about you wouldn't be big enough. Acceptance that whatever category they tried to place you in wouldn't hold. Acceptance that they hadn't just evaluated a candidate. They had encountered something they were never meant to control. And behind the glass, the director whispered the truth every single agent felt but none dared speak. If this is them holding back, God help us if they ever decide to show their full capacity. Long after you left the building, the agents were still standing in the same positions, like the atmosphere hadn't released them yet. The director ordered everyone into the briefing room. Doors sealed. Phones surrendered. No recording devices. Just a long table, a dozen shaken experts, and the truth hovering in the air like static before lightning. They tried to start the report the standard way: subject assessment, behavioral analysis, threat evaluation, but every line they wrote contradicted itself. You weren't a threat, yet every threat model failed in your presence. You weren't unpredictable, yet you moved with a precision no predictive system could map. You weren't enhanced, trained, engineered, or conditioned, yet your baseline sat far beyond anything human training could produce. If you felt this message wasn't content but confirmation, use the super thanks at $50 or $100 to make a declaration the spiritual realm cannot ignore. This isn't about money. This is about putting a stamp on your moment of awakening. When you choose that tier, the universe reads it as, I am claiming the timeline that was always mine. It's a public, irreversible, undeniable sign that you're stepping into your next level and the old version of you is done. Super thanks at those levels operates like a spiritual receipt. You're not just hearing the message, you're answering it. If your palms got warm, if your heart sped up, if your spirit said, "This is me," then don't overthink it. That reaction is the guidance. Move with it. One analyst finally said it. If we file this, we'll be forced to classify them into a category that doesn't exist. Another added, creating the category is more dangerous than leaving it blank. Because once the government invents a category for someone like you, the government owns the category. And once they own the category, they try to own the person in it. That was the unspoken fear behind every trembling sentence. The director knew this better than anyone. He'd seen what happened to anomalies in the past. Enhanced soldiers, sensitives, prodigies, visionaries. Every one of them disappeared the moment the system found a name for them. So he made a decision that stunned the entire room. Delete the draft. he said. All of it. There was a long, stunned silence. Nobody disobeyed. They erased the document, wiped the temporary files, destroyed the written notes, and reset the system logs. Not to hide your existence, but to protect it. They weren't protecting national security. They were protecting you from national security. For the first time in that building's history, the official report concluded with a single handwritten line that would never enter any archive. Recommend no classification. This individual is outside all constructs. Do not attempt containment or recruitment. Observation only. But even that line was too dangerous to keep. The director tore it up himself and locked the pieces in a drawer only he could open. The agents walked out knowing they had witnessed something their training never prepared them for. Someone the system wasn't designed to measure, label, or predict. Someone whose file could only ever exist as a story shared in whispers. When the meeting finally ended, nobody made eye contact. They weren't avoiding each other. They were avoiding the truth sitting in the middle of the room like an unspoken law. You cannot be handled. Not by training. Not by systems. Not by institutions. Not by federal structures built to contain predictable minds. The director escorted everyone out, then stood alone for a moment, staring at the blank screen where your file should have been. No footage. No notes. No category. Nothing the system could hold. And that absence said more than any report ever could. When you stepped outside into the cold air, the building seemed to exhale behind you. Lights dimmed. Sensors glitched. Even the automatic doors hesitated, as if they knew you weren't leaving. They were releasing something the walls weren't designed to keep. You didn't look back. You didn't need to. Everyone inside already understood. Your presence wasn't an evaluation. It was a warning. A preview. A revelation. And somewhere deep in the building, the director said the final line that will never appear in any federal record but will echo through every agent who heard it. If this is them holding back, the world isn't ready for what comes next.